And here are the two Arcees in robot mode, side by side. And again, Wheeljack will be making cameos for the sake of comparing scale and, of course, features. Alright, so, yeah, take them in. Here is First Edition Arcee, and here is Robots in Disguise Arcee. The first thing you're going to notice is quite a disparity in height. First Edition Arcee is almost a full inch taller than her mainline sister. Also, you're going to notice a distinct addition of massively gigantic back kibble. I mean, look at that. Literally half of Arcee's motorcycle is just hanging off her shoulder blades like that. Well, on this one, only the wheel and windshield are. However, there is one thing. I had said that this wing being on Arcee's shoulder was the one thing that wasn't accurate to the cartoon. On this one, although the wing may be a little bit oversized, it is attached to Arcee's back, allowing her shoulder to be much more screen accurate. So this part right here is actually more accurate to the cartoon. And also, if you look down here, that's a full wheel. It splits in half so that each leg can have a wheel. On this side, the wheel splits in half, so only a half wheel goes into the back of her leg. Visually, it's a similar effect, but I just thought it was worth mentioning. Also, the fact that they didn't paint any of this black really shows. Here it all looks like part of the foot because it's black. Here, only her toe is black, and then all that is blue, so it creates kind of a distraction. Anyway, let's again take a look at them from their best angles, the fronts. If we zoom in, oh, by the way, again, I should mention my touch-ups. This Arcee came with solid black forearms, which I painted blue, and I also painted in the little red gem on her forehead. So just remember, in the original toy, this would be completely black. There would be no blue or pink, and this would just be uniformly pink. There wouldn't be a red gem in her forehead. And there are the two sister Arcees. As you can see, all the details of Arcee's chest plate were hidden inside the motorcycle and were revealed in transformation, while this one used the motorcycle's parts to build up the torso. This looks a little bit more screen accurate, but it left it with more kibble, as I said. And this one isn't quite as accurate to the screen, but it impressed me with the engineering that they were able to do it. So, I don't know. Also, this version has no faction symbol. Actually, Wheeljack doesn't have a faction symbol either. And I also have the Robots in Disguise Soundwave, and he doesn't have a faction symbol. Why don't any of these guys have their faction symbols? That's kind of important, don't you think? That's how it's always been. But I digress. Let's zoom the camera back out to get a broader comparison of their features and such. Okay, so let's look at the arms. By the way, the legs are pretty much identical. They have fantastic knees, nice thigh swivel, good ball jointed hip. They both have this part. So their legs, functionally, they're identical. So no need there. Oh, there was some automorph involved. When I moved this pelvis joint in place, it made her head pop up. So there's automorph in this torso. That's probably why she does not have a waist joint, whereas this Arcee does. It's at a little bit of an angle, but you can use it for poses. So, to have an automorph head reveal, she sacrifices a waist joint. Although, the head reveal for the first edition was actually a point of contention, because I remember the first time I bought this problem child, the head was stuck and would not come out, and I had to return her to the store and buy a new one. So yeah. Fortunately I did that before they pulled them from shelves, otherwise I would not have a first edition Arcee. I literally bought the last one that the store would ever get in. Can you believe my luck? Okay. Moving on to comparison, the arms. Arcee has ball jointed shoulders. As I said, her shoulder kibble can get in the way of some poses, but it's articulated so you can get it out of the way. She has a bicep swivel, a double jointed shoulder, and she has a wrist swivel that can go inwards and outwards, but not around. This Arcee, she accomplishes most of the same levels of articulation, but through ball joints, and her arm can't go out quite as far as the first edition Arcees. It can go that far out. So again, it's kind of a deeply recessed cup. It's kind of not as robust, but you should still be able to get multiple poses. She has a ball jointed elbow, which has a de facto bicep swivel because it's a ball joint, but it also can only go up this far, whereas this Arcee can touch her own shoulder, this one can't. She does, however, have a ball jointed wrist, which gives her a wrist swivel, and a wrist swivel is the one thing missing from the original first edition. So yeah, that's the comparison in the articulation and the size. Although a lot of the paint apps which are missing from motorcycle mode, they really are present all over Arcee. You see, she has gray, where this is black, this is gray, then you have silver, and this part's black, and you know, they didn't use any pink in this version of Arcee, which kind of irritates me for some reason. See, there's pink that frames the first edition Arcee's face, but in the new version, it's all silver. I don't think I like that. I kind of like the pink accents. I mean, Arcee is supposed to be a pink robot, but since they teamed her up with a boy human, they made her blue. But I like those pink accents. Now all the accents are silver, and it's not cool anymore. What I will say about the light piping is my flashlight is dead, so I can't demonstrate the light piping. Hold on. I'm going to maneuver the camera around to look out the window. Please excuse the potted plants. Yeah, there we go. See, first, the Robots in Disguise Arcee has some really nice light piping there. Her eyes just kind of blaze when they get a good light source behind them. Although, her neck is made out of translucent blue. I've heard from a lot of other Transformers collectors that when you have translucent parts that form the articulation, that's something to look out for because they can break easily. Compare the light piping to the first edition Arcee, and in principle it's nicer light piping. The only problem being that even it's the kind of light piping that has pupils, but it's also weaker piping. I think because not as much of her head is made out of translucent material, the piping doesn't really work as well, and this looks really fuzzy because the background is too busy, and I really should have set this up better. Who would have thought filming your Transformers toy reviews in the kitchen would be so troublesome? Okay, so like I said, I was gonna do a quick comparison with the Wheeljack figure. Let's see. Just for the sake of scale, as you can see, Wheeljack is significantly shorter than Robots in Disguise Arcee, In fact, he is about, his eye level just about perfectly lines up with Arcee's robo cleavage. I think that this is a perfect size scale. Comparing it to the robots in disguise, they are in fact eye to eye. Although this still kind of means that this Arcee is still a little too tall, because she is a motorcycle and the smallest of the Autobots because of it. So she should actually be a little bit shorter than Wheeljack, but here she's about the same height. I can't really think of a way to fix that, except if you had all the first edition toys, which are all as tall as Arcee, and then you put this Arcee next to them, then she would be the proper scale next to them. But with her fellow... Anyway, what am I talking about? The physics of scale are an extremely rare thing with Transformers. It's rare that they ever scale with each other at all, so I guess I should be happy that she's just not taller than anybody. Oh, one thing about Wheeljack. In the card art on his blister pack, they show him with his blaster arm. As you know, all Transformers, they can just kind of suck their hand in and replace it with a blaster, and that is one of their primary armaments. Wheeljack, he has, if you remember first edition Cliffjumper, he is the only toy to actually replicate that effect in his toy, when you can flip his hand around to reveal the cannons on the other side. Wheeljack has the exact mechanism to do it. It's part of his transformation. It's how his hand reveals. So, if all they had done was sculpt this piece here to look like the barrel of a gun, then he would have the blaster hand reveal. But they didn't do that. And that really kind of irritates me a lot. It's like blatant false advertising. You show him with his cannon arm on the blister pack, but then he doesn't actually have the cannon arm when you open the toy. That is blatant false advertising. And it's especially teasing because the way to do it is right there. And yes, that is... You just see my ulterior motive. That is the real reason why I included Wheeljack in this review. So that I could bitch about that lack of an accessory. Okay, so this video has gone on for quite a long time, but there is one more thing to talk about, and that's how they look while wielding their accessories. Here is Arcee's sword from the first edition, and here is her sword from the Robots in Disguise. Allow me to hold them to show how the Robots in Disguise sword is much smaller and is actually about the size that you would expect the sword to be based on the in-cartoon appearance. It may be unpainted, but it is more accurate to the scale. And the way they go on is pretty much the same. There's a hole in the forearm, which you just kind of peg it onto. And I didn't see this coming, but when I painted Arcee's forearm, I must have gotten some in the hole, which makes the peg tighter. Whew. Yes. And let's put it on the same arm. Robots in Disguise Arcee has the exact same peg and hole system, and as you can see, despite the shorter stature, the sword actually does look a bit better. It's not that much longer than her forearm. I mean, if you look at this, like, more than half of the sword's length sticks out behind Arcee's arm in the first edition model. But on the Robots in Disguise model, less than a quarter of the sword's overall length sticks out past her elbow. So, I mean, there's still an element of mass shifting in there, but you can be convinced on some level that the sword is stowed into the arm somehow. It's not overly ridiculously huge. What is overly ridiculously huge is the gun they decided to pack in with it. I mean, this is big enough to be Optimus Prime's gun. And that's probably why they included it. They probably included it so that you could give it to Prime, because this thing is just way too big for her. Also, I'm just getting around to this now, but Arcee's hand is sculpted so that it actually has a peg in there, so she can actually hold things. That's something that the first edition cannot do. First edition Arcee's hands do not hold things. They're designed to be expressive, not functional. Although Arcee doesn't hold her gun like this in the cartoon. No, the gun is supposed to be... That is why the gun has a second clipping point there that conceals the hand entirely. Am I getting this? See? Only problem is that it is more than twice as long as her entire arm. Okay, maybe not more than twice. It's more than twice as long as her forearm, but it is still half again as long as her entire arm up to the shoulder. There's no way that this clips in. There's no way that this is a transformation reveal. So kudos for them giving it that little hidey hole point so that it looks like it's part of her hand, but unless she has a freaking TARDIS up her sleeve, there's no way that this gun came from inside of her. So yes, still going with the ridiculously oversized accessories, despite the fact that for the first time they really didn't have to on this girl. I mean, that gun could have worked. The way she holds it could have worked. The only problem is that they made it too big. The way she holds it is perfect. They just needed to make it smaller. Why? Why? Alright, so let's actually, can Wheeljack's door kibble kind of makes it so that he can't hold it in the cuff position, but I think if you turn his hand a little, yeah, Wheeljack can totally hold the gun, and on a big burly guy like him, it actually looks a little bit more convincing. Like, I mean, it's still not accurate to anything he had in the show, but it actually looks like something he can effectively wield. It's not like something that completely outmasses him. I mean, I can imagine poor Arcee, if she tried to wield a gun this size, the recoil would send her flying back. Of course, he comes with a very sensibly sized sword, which, probably because of inspiration from Drift, a popular character from the Generations line, has some cyber kanji on the blade, which is probably doing a really crappy job of showing up. And he can wield it very effectively in robot mode. You just kind of slide it over his hand like that. And he's robust enough to hold the swords upwards or downwards. And if you don't want him to hold the swords but still want him to carry them, there is a groove right there in his back that the sword very neatly fits into, like a scabbard. And I think that that was intentional. It's very nice storage for his swords. And I'm also impressed that they didn't feel the need to turn these into blatantly oversized, you know, ridiculously huge things. They're just sensible, short swords that he can swing with great speed and efficiency, which is Drift's fighting style. He's very fast, and his fighting style is quite close up and brutal, which would suit a short sword style much better than a long sword. Although I still think it would have been cool if he had just giant katana. Okay, so final verdict. Robots in Disguise Arcee versus mainline Arcee. For screen accuracy from the front, the mainline Arcee does look a little bit more like the in-cartoon model. There's no denying that. As long as you don't look at her from profile. But from the front, she looks much closer. The articulation, the legs are identical. This version of Arcee has no waist, and her arms are a little bit more limited because they use ball joints instead of double hinges. But she does have better wrists. And as for the transformation, this one's is much simpler. I mean, when I do first edition, there's 2 points where I feel like I'm going to break something, but on this one, everything went pretty smoothly. So, I would recommend getting mainline Arcee. She is a very cool toy. If the first editions ever become available for a reasonable price, I gotta admit, the shinier blue, the improved paint apps, I still kind of lean towards this one, although I don't, like I said, her one flaw is the oversized swords, while this one has much more reasonably sized swords. So, yeah, I mean, they both have their high points and their low points. I'm still going to give the win to first edition, but she's still very nice. I still highly recommend her. And once again, I want to thank Andrew Strappers for getting her to me. So this is Toy Customizer Wakeangel2K1 signing out.